Hello, this is Subspace Transmissions. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Cam.
Cam, we just watched the mid-season finale of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Into the Forest I Go, and we were struck by probably the most prominent fight sequence we've seen on Star Trek Discovery since Saru got hit by a stick last week in the previous episode 8. So how did this one stack up? We had Burnham v. General Cole with the mechlith, the revamped-looking mechlith, though.
This was a badass moment of Burnham being put in a position where she had to stall for time and being like, "Where's your honor? Let's fight it out."
Yeah, does General Cole seem like somebody who ever cared about honor, though? Like, I find that fascinating that she was able to get him on that kind of degree there.
I think he has an honor code. It's just that he's an opportunist.
Okay.
I think if you appeal to, like, to me, the honor code, the whole, like, honor in battle and all that is the core of the Klingon. Everything else can be kind of shifty, but that part is like their Achilles heel.
House core, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, anyways, I love the direction of the episode that we saw here, Into the Forest I Go. I think this is from Chris Byrne. I think this is probably the best directed episode of Star Trek Discovery that we've seen so far, and this fight sequence did not disappoint.
Yeah.
We got everything from a lot of slices and dices to slow motion transporter action here. You dig. What other kind of Star Trek fight sequences, if you look through the franchise, what stands out to you, Cam?
Yeah, there's a lot of fights in Star Trek. How many of them are good? One that jumps to mind to me that was pretty awesome is Archer versus the Xindi reptile in 0 Hour from the Season 3 finale of Enterprise, where Archer's going up against this formidable foe. It's kind of got that Kirk Gowron kind of idea, where obviously one side is way stronger than the other. But the thing is, Archer is smarter.
Okay, I do dig that.
Kaboom.
And it also, literally, kaboom. It ended in a fireball.
Yeah.
That one also had a lot of use of slow motion techniques in that. Is that
if you have Scott Bakula, you want slow-mo.
Well, I'll give you another example of slow motion in a Star Trek fight sequence. Tacking into the Wind in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We had one Gowron versus Worf there.
Yeah.
And we get, DS9's strategic operations officer, killing the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. And don't worry, it's all good. But that was actually like a fight sequence that worked for me because it had emotional stakes involved with it. These are friends, these are allies going back years, and like to figure out that Worf's like, yeah, I'll kill him. Might as well, So, look, you say what you want about maybe, I don't know, the choreography of fight sequences back in the mid-1990s, but that was a fight to me that really stood out in Star Trek.
That's an issue with a lot of Star Trek, where the fight itself, you understand the emotion of it, but the choreography is so wonky that it's like, oh, it's like, you think of Kirk.
Arena?
Yeah, you think of Kirk versus Kirk Kirk versus Krug in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
Yeah.
And that's a fight with a lot at stake, right? He's killed Kirk's son. There's a lot of emotion there. And then it's really, really awkward. It's just kind of clunky.
Who do you think would have been more deserving of a good fight sequence in, say, Star Trek? Because I think, did Kira ever get to look super badass beating somebody up?
No,
because Kira seems like she would have been primed to do that. I just don't know if the fight choreography was there.
No, it wasn't. It never was. Another fight that I'm curious on your take on is the Riker versus Head Riemann fight in Star Trek Nemesis.
Yeah, okay, so the issue I have with Riker versus the Viceroy is that he's getting vengeance on behalf of Troy, who is violated by the Viceroy telepathically.
Yeah.
This should be Troy kicking the Riemann's ass, not Riker, and that's why emotionally the stakes weren't really there for me, and it just seemed kind of like, I don't want to say it's misogynistic, but it's very much kind of that male-centric sort of fight sequence where, like, I'm going to avenge my spouse's honor here.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with the fight, and Riker gets a pretty cool, final kill moment.
The Riemann has a cool knife, right?
Yeah, like, it's not bad technically, but it just doesn't really... there's no emotion to it, really.
Okay, but if we're talking about Nemesis, though, like, what about one Shinzon taking the whole spear to his chest when he and Picard were going at it?
I was lonely.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah,
okay,
not bad.
We have mocked the Kung Fu garbage truck fight in Star Trek Into Darkness on the podcast.
Right.
I think it was actually well choreographed. It just didn't have the emotional stakes, though.
I can't really get behind that one. To me, it's just kind of... that movie goes so off the rails in that last 20 minutes. I'm so not invested in watching Spock punch someone out on a garbage truck.
So we're going back to kind of the emotional stakes involved with the fight.
I think that's important, is that you feel something.
So what are the fight sequences in Star Trek that have kind of emotional stakes attached to it? It's just funny because how many emotional stakes are attached to one General Cole and Michael Burnham, but this fight sequence works. There's a certain tension.
And I'll tell you why. It's because we've seen Burnham in a similar situation in the premiere of Star Trek Discovery, where we got to see her and Georgiou go over. Georgiou was killed. Now we're seeing Burnham go back and face off against what is kind of her greatest regret in many ways of the series, is, having Georgiou be killed. And she's going back and kind of ending the Klingon War, or at least striking a major blow for the Klingon War.
Yeah,
the war that she at least had a hand, I think, she feels in starting.
So what you're getting at, though, is the trick is the antagonist should be picking his teeth with Giorgio's combat.
That will never hurt.
Okay, I like that. Star Trek Voyager, we have, say, the Borg Queen versus Admiral Janeway.
Yeah.
That one didn't quite work for me.
And whenever someone's in old age makeup fighting, it's just not going to work. But 7 of 9 versus The Rock in Sunkasi.
Okay, that was actually kind of cool because it felt badass, and that's what we're trying to grapple with here. Is all the badass sort of fight sequences.
What's always fun is when they present an adversary who's incredibly formidable looking, and The Rock, The Rock in his prime at that era, and they put Jerry Ryan opposite him and convinced us that Jerry Ryan could beat him. Yeah. And I think that's actually a real credit to the episode. And, you look at Burnham opposite Cole tonight. You look at these two opposite each other and you go, this looks a little ill-matched. But you believe by the end that Burnham would beat him.
Okay, so if you put Jerry Ryan against Jason Statham, who would win?
Obviously Jerry Ryan.
Okay.
Right? That's not even a question.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Let's think about the original series. You kind of mocked Arena. Were there good fight
the Arena
sequences?
is important in that, we do see that Kirk can't beat the Gorn in a one-on-one fight. He has to beat him through his own smarts. So, at least we're seeing
with a ballistic weapon.
Yeah, he cheats. But the original series isn't very good for fights. I guess the one that maybe jumps out the most is Kirk versus Khan, where we see him beating him down with a wrench at the end.
I was going to say a mock time because you've got
that also counts,
you have the emotional stakes invested.
Sure.
I think, I would say Space Seed and a mock time are probably the best that we had with the original series.
I think the reason Space Seed really jumps out to me is because Wrath of Khan, we never got to see those two face off face-to-face, just on view screens, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And there was an original bit in the script that they did have a fight, and Khan had a psychic whip that he was going to hit Kirk with.
Okay.
Who knows? It's better off that it was cut. But Space Seed, we actually got to see that face-off, and we get to see Kirk just pummeling him with a wrench, which is pretty awesome.
It didn't stop.
No, he just kept going and going. Should have gone a little longer, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Would have saved a lot of effort.
Yeah, well, Cam, I don't want to leave the listeners and the viewers, wanting more. Are there any other ones that stand out to you when it comes to Star Trek at its peak? I just wonder if Star Trek, the problem is they're very obsessed with the two-fisted punch,
right?
Which we always thought was really cheesy, and I think that's what most fight sequences we've seen have resulted in, and that's why we're maybe not super attached to what we've seen come before this.
Well, you reference a mock time, and I would love to include a Spock fight because we've seen that Burnham is trained in Vulcan martial arts, so in theory, so would Spock. But all Spock ever really had to do was just Vulcan nerve pinch someone, and they dropped. But we did see in a mock time an actual fight, which was really neat to see.
Right, okay.
But beyond that, Spock would usually just nerve pinch them, and that was the end of it.
Okay. So for viewers, if there are any fight sequences that we're missing out on, please comment on this. We'll talk about it on the podcast. Also, tune into our podcast. We've got a pretty in-depth mid-season sort of break that we dive into on this latest episode. So it's a lot of fun there because we are tackling Into the Forest I Go.
Yeah.
And we also go in depth on like kind of what we expect to see when the series returns in January.
I'm counting the days already.